Obama and the Pentagon are asking Congress for a record $708 billion to fund the military, an increase of 3.4% in military spending over 2010. For the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, $193 billion more, including $33 billion for thousands more troops, 2,800 new special operations soldiers, and increased numbers of helicopters to Afghanistan. To pay for Afghanistan, the Pentagon is cutting military aircraft acquisition.
The Department of Defense is exempt from the budget freeze.
At a Pentagon news conference, Defense Secretary Gates, Joint Chiefs Chairman Mullen, and Assistant Secretary of Defense Flournoy said leaving Iraq with adequate security forces and stepping up the fight against insurgents in Afghanistan gets the most attention in the newly proposed military budget.
Achieving our objectives in Afghanistan and Iraq has moved to the top of the institutional military's budgeting, policy, and program priorities.
I'm comfortable that the fiscal year 10 supplemental and the fiscal year 11 overseas contingency operations requests provide our troops what they'll need to complete a responsible drawdown in Iraq and execute the President's strategy in Afghanistan and Pakistan.
Just as our forces today are operating in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Haiti and elsewhere around the world, we must be ready and able to project power in multiple regions.
The Pentagon is also proposing a big jump in missile defense spending, especially in Europe, allegedly to counter a threat from North Korea and Iran. And in addition, a 10% increase in spending on the U.S. nuclear arsenal. Former Assistant Secretary of Defense under President Reagan, Lawrence Korb, says the money is for the drawdown in Iraq, the big boost in money to fight the Taliban in Afghanistan.
Even though you had hoped that total war spending would come down as you began to withdraw from Iraq, you've increased more in Afghanistan, so that has not come down, and it's going to be close to $200 billion.
Critics say that Obama, who got the Nobel Peace Prize and has promised in principle with the Russians to significantly cut U.S. nuclear weapons, is instead in the new budget spending a lot more, $5 billion over 5 years, to build a whole new generation of nuclear weapons. Ostensibly to modernize the arsenal, says Korb, but mostly, he says, to goad the Russians into a final arms agreement and to keep America's nuclear labs busy.
Even though the number of warheads is going to be smaller, assuming that you get the agreement with the Russians, what he's trying to do is make sure that the smaller number of weapons are actually up to date, will work.
Obama, in his $3.8 trillion proposed budget for 2011, freezes spending on many government programs. The U.S. military budget, however, grows by 1.8%, much of the increase directed at Afghanistan. Mike Kellerman, Press TV, Washington.